Hello and welcome on in to Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA podcast. I am Chris DiCarlo, the Vice President of the WFIA. We got a big lineup today. Gentlemen, almost got all 9 for Classic Pro Wrestling Hollywood Squares, but we're going to have a good show anyway. And what a panel we got. But first, my partner down there under George, the man with class from Rhode Island, Mike the Class DiCagorio. How are you? Mike?
Frozen in time.
No. Well, I don't know. He's there. To my left, always in the corner of my left, it seems like lately, Benny.
It's good to be here.
There he is.
There we go.
Our producer, friend, WFIA board member, the one and
Good to
only
be here,
player,
gentlemen.
Mr. Benny Scala.
Glad to be here. I'm Charlie Weaver to Block.
All right. Underneath me, from longtime classic pro wrestling announcer from NWA Detroit, the one and only legend, historian, Mr. Terry Sullivan. Welcome.
Howdy. Thank you.
To the corner of my right is not only of just the AWA, but all the territories, our good friend, WFIA advisor, Mr. George Shire.
Gentlemen, good evening.
Underneath Benny is our buddy, historian, host of Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel, also on Facebook and Twitter, historian, Mr. Tony Richards. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
And last but not least, under Terry Sullivan is the WFIA president, author of the book Vern, Inside and Outside of the Rope, Mr. Brian Ferguson.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on tonight. I appreciate it.
And a little WFIA business, since this is podcast is what it's about. If you can go to the WFIA.org, O-R-G, and right now, 2 things we got going on. You can buy like a t-shirt behind me for sale. We have our coffee mugs. Also, of course, the main thing is to join us, become a member, $50 for the calendar year. You will get a monthly classic newsletter via email. You will get a picture of a classic wrestler, manager, referee, whatever we have. And also, we're looking to do a discount for an in-person convention in 2027, I'm going to say, will be the 60th anniversary of the WFIA. So I'll appreciate you guys to do that. And Mr. Benny Scala, why don't you start us this show off with the toast?
Yeah, and this is not milk, just in case you're wondering. It looks like milk, but it's actually a pina colada from Chi-Chi's or Chai-Chai's, I guess. But yeah, I want to toast, first of all, to all the great classic wrestlers that make this show possible, and also to the continued success of the WFIA. Salute.
Salute.
Hello.
Thank you. And Benny, if you will, put up my graphic for the copyright law 107, please. This is scrunched down, but this is under copyright law 107, as we are going to criticize and comment on the following videos, which of course are my personal library. I do not sell them to nobody. I don't rent them to nobody. And also I have complete verbal consent from our friends at the Wrestling Legends Network, the Parsons, to share footage in the name of Classic Pro Wrestling, and also our friends from the Savoldi Wrestling Library to show footage. And with that, Benny, why don't you show our classic clip number 1, pro wrestling angles of all the territories.
That they would not wrestle in a ring, they would wrestle in the mud in a field, and the legend has it that the famous Indian wrestlers of the turn of the century, the first part of the 20th century.
The sound was muted, but as you see here,
wrestle in front of 150,000 people.
We are looking at a rare classic, a mud match. And here is a shark cage inside of the squared circle.
Boy Bob Ellis right now. Uh-oh. Ernie Ladd. Oh.
Oh,
What's going on? Ernie Ladd has attacked his
Ernie, the big cat lad, turning on his partner, Cowboy Bob Ellis.
away right now. So he hasn't been putting his hands on me right now. He should have been in when he should have been in the ring.
Another one.
He wasn't in the ring.
Got a couple of the great Ernie Ladd here, turning on Dusty Road.
Here was a man who was your best friend.
Another rare occurrence, the Masked Superstar pulling the mask off of Mr. Wrestling #2 here. Oh. Mid-Atlantic, the Iron Sheik, whipping, going after Big Blackjack Mulligan for trying those Persian clubs.
Down to one. And the other two in there, the block hurtled into the face of Ken Patera. He's shaking his head. He took the full impact of the last two blocks.
Wow.
Some definitely rare angles, if you will. Terry, we're going to start with you because the first two were your hometown there in Detroit, NWA, and we talked that mud match you said was Cobo Arena.
Yeah, Cobo Arena, by probably 75, I'm going to say. And then the Strongbow against Bulldog Don. Yeah, it was Strongbow against Bulldog Don Kent in the cage. That was from Toledo, Ohio. If any of you are familiar with Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., he was the skinny young guy who was the referee in that shark cage match.
And like we talked about off camera, there was a shark cage event in the history of pro wrestling in any territory, but it was odd to see.
Illegal.
But that mud match, I thought that was quite odd myself. I mean, the getting covered in mud, those two guys, or what?
Yeah, usually they saved the mud matches for the women even back then. But no, it wasn't totally unusual for a mud match. But I think it was the only one they ever did in Cobo.
And what do you think about some of those, Benny, especially Jimmy Snuka breaking the cinder blocks over Patera's head?
Yeah, that was pretty good. The one that always gets me is I think it was January 24th, 1980 was when Larry and Bruno had the quote unquote exhibition. And Larry had said that if he couldn't face Bruno in a match, in an exhibition or a match, actually, he said that he would quit wrestling. And then Bruno, initially refused. They played it up to the hilt. Bruno didn't want to do it, but then he goes on TV and says, all the cards and letters that came in, I've never turned the fans down. But I'm not going to hurt Larry. And you saw what happened. And man, they got a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah, for at least 8-9 months anyway.
Yeah.
Mr. Tony Richards, what do you think of some of those classic clips of our angles?
Oh man, I tell you, I love the big cat, Ernie Ladd, and seeing him in some of those clips. And 60 years ago in 1965, Ernie Ladd was starting a program with a guy in Dallas, Texas. And Ernie had been traded away from the Rams, I believe, to the Houston football team.
I believe he started with San Diego, and he went from San Diego to Houston, I believe. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so he's wrestling. So he's wrestling in Texas. He's kind of on the tail end of his football career, but he's in a program with Fritz von Erich. And Fritz at that time I telling George yesterday when we were talking, I tell people all the time, I love the video era quite a bit, but it shortchanges people sometimes on careers of guys like a Fritz von Erich, who, if you watch some of his stuff from the 60s and early 70s, I mean, that guy, for a big man, he had mobility. He could move around the ring. Same thing with Ernie Ladd. I mean, I would give anything to be able to see that program between Ernie Ladd and Fritz.
And we saw a rare one there, Ernie Ladd going against beating Jay Strongbow and stuffing his own feathers right in his mouth, Benny.
That never happened before, right?
Yeah.
That was one of Ernie's favorites.
And George, what about some of those classic clips?
Well, I'll always admit to you guys that I guess I'm always more of the traditionalist because I don't know how I would have taken to a mud match if I would have actually wanted to be ringside for it. I don't think it was a draw for me at any age. And, some territories relied more on sort of the gimmicks like that more often than some did. I like the classic heel babyface turns. You showed that clip of Zbyszko going off on Bruno. And I remember what Benny said, about that interview when, Bruno said, I don't want to wrestle him, but I will wrestle him if I have to. And I don't want to hurt him, and I remember watching that. And then you see how Zbyszko goes crazy on him. And the Ernie Ladd turn on Ellis. Those are the things that, for me, I thought were the greatest storylines, angles in pro wrestling. I think they drew the fans because they really played on your emotions. You'd have that oh my God moment when your babyface friend turned on his partner, or vice versa, whatever the situation. And I think those are what, at least for me, I loved those type of angles the best. The gimmicks, I don't know. I think they obviously they draw, and that's the sad thing, if they draw a person to the auditorium, people are willing, or the promoters are willing to put it out there. I got to mention that shark cage thing.
Yes.
That thing was the size of an airplane bathroom. How did these guys, what was the objective here? And seriously, Brian, your bathroom in your motorhome, I bet, is bigger.
I think you're
Come
right.
on. Seriously, I looked at that and I went, okay, that's a new one on me. I mean, these guys, they're going to get up close and cozy with one another in there.
Yeah.
No one changed into Superman.
No.
And Terry, I mean, what was really the objective? Was to get out of that cage? I mean, there was no pinfall, no blood, no sleeper hold. I mean, what? I don't know.
I don't even remember, to be honest with you. The first man out of I don't know.
Were you able to go over the top, or was it locked? Or
no, it was sealed.
Okay.
I think it was just the door there on the side, the way they got in it.
Yeah. No, they came in and out of it, so it was really relaxed rules.
And Brian Ferguson, why don't you think about some of those classic angles from all the territories?
Well, I tell you, I've never seen the shark cage one. That was a new one for me as well. So I'm with George on that. I'll tell you, Ernie Ladd, probably, to me anyways, one of the great athlete, no doubt. I think, he was a tag team champion and all. I think he should have had a little short run as a world champion, maybe as a, when they did back in the day, they do those transit champions in like a month or two or whatever.
Transitional.
There's
mailman. They called him the mailman. They carried it from one guy to another.
Right. Even for a few months, like 2 or 3 months, because Ernie Ladd was believable. He was legit. And he was a force to be reckoned with. And the Terra one, I forgot about that. I haven't seen that, since I was a little kid. So those were great clips. Like I said, that shark one, that was I wasn't a big fan of that one myself.
I have to tell you guys, with Ernie Ladd, I had the opportunity to see him in 1966 when he worked for Vern. He came in, he was a babyface. He was wrestling the off season. I believe he was with the Kansas City Chiefs at the time.
Yeah.
And he was even Vern's partner against Larry Hennig and Harley Race. Man, that went over, and it was the thing where he was, at that point, Ernie was only wrestling part-time during the off season. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it made a big impact. And then, when he turned heel, I had a chance to see him. And you talk about a guy that's so different. I had a chance to know Ernie Ladd through Cauliflower Alley, and just a down-to-earth. I found him to be a very genuine rather quiet type guy to project that personality that he did and so well as a heel. It makes him, in my opinion, just a heck of a talent. So as a heel, I think he was doing, I saw him one time, he was doing the King gimmick, King Ernie Ladd.
Yep.
Yeah, he did. And he was good. And like I say, I love the turn on your partner angle. That to me is the greatest storyline in all of pro wrestling, no matter when you played it. You can shock the fans. You can wake them up. You can get them out of the seat. And they could, like I said, it's an oh my God moment. How did this happen? How could they do this to each other?
Just about every partner Dusty ever had turned on him.
Well, but see, now sometimes, Tony, that could be overused because the thing to make it effective, it wasn't something you could do, every year or every other month or any of that, because then the fans didn't, not that it didn't draw money, but it got to be expected rather than, I think it's the shock value.
Yeah.
That, or even when some wrestler would choose a partner to go into a match and you go, how can they coexist together? I mean, this team doesn't make sense. How can they trust one another? Because
we had that.
And Tony, you and I talked about one of those yesterday. So I think those are great.
I was going to bring up another one besides the one we discussed yesterday, but in the Tennessee territory, we had Jackie Fargo and Crazy Luke Graham, and they were bitter enemies, but they were taking on Rocket Monroe and Randy Tyler, and Crazy Luke put up a $5,000 bond. He wouldn't turn on Jackie Fargo. Mm-hmm. And so the whole time during that whole program, we were just waiting for him to do it.
Yeah.
And violate and have to pay the $5,000. So it was another way of doing that I thought was really good. That I think I think Nick booked that, which was one of Nick Goulis's better ideas.
And Mike DeClass, what do you think about some of those classic angles? Huh? Different from back in the day.
Yeah, the little cage one really stuck out to me the most. But I noticed a lot of those clips were Ernie Ladd. That was pretty interesting that they focused so much on him, which he had some good feuds too. So, but he was a good character, that's for sure.
Yeah, well,
but it's interesting because
go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting that if you guys had one main pairing that was a unique pairing in the 70s, what would it be to each one of you?
There's a good
question. We can start with Benny on that one.
A unique pairing, you're asking? Like two guys that joined together that you didn't think could or would?
Yes.
I'll go first on this. In the 70s, I think the one, and this was the later 70s, I think the one that really made an impact on AWA fans was Vern Gagne choosing Mad Dog Vachon as his partner to go against Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson. And as I said before, that shock value, because if you start at 1964 all the way up until 1978, Vern and Mad Dog were as bitter enemies to the fans. Their matches were out of this world classics. They were the exact opposite of one another. Mad Dog was a scowling, biting, kicking, stomping dog. And Vern was, I use that term, mom's apple pie, good guy all the time. And Stevens and Patterson had injured Billy Robinson, to put him out of action. And Vern, after some matches with Vern and Billy, and Vern came out and said that he wants to avenge Billy's injury. And it appears that I'm going to have to try to find a partner that can fight dirty like Ray and Pat. He says these guys, they don't follow the rules. They break every rule. And he says, I'm going to have to come up with a partner. And he kind of left it at that. But a week or two goes by and we start getting teased. And then it turns out that Ray Stevens, the storyline, had broken the dog's arm. And dog wanted revenge. Well, they got a common goal. And, I hate you, Vern Gagne, and I don't like you either, Mad Dog, but let's work together and take care of Stevens and Patterson. And that, it left you thinking. I'm thinking, this is one of the coolest matchups I've ever seen. And I was sitting there thinking, are they going to go through it and have another Vern and Mad Dog series? Or, and that's what's good about it, is you were on your seat waiting for them to turn on each other. But they worked. They did it. And they won the tag team title. Held it for almost a year. Great. And then they played that later on too, guys, after Vern retired from active competition, 2 years after his retirement. And Mad Dog is putting the call out to Vern Gagne when he had his battles with Sheik Casey and Blackwell. And the dog said, Gagne, Vern, he'd said, I hate your guts, but you owe me a favor. You owe me. And Vern kept saying, no, I'm retired, Mad Dog. And finally he said, you know what? He's right. I owe him a favor. I'll team with him. And that made the coming out of retirement so storyline beautiful, because he's coming out. And then they said, when we win or when we take care of him, you go your way and I'll go my way. That is my favorite of the 70s. And then later it turned into the 80s.
Wow, Benny.
How about maybe not a pairing, but I really liked when, I guess in the early to mid 80s, when George Steele, who had been a hated heel for, is that Sheldon?
Yes,
Mr. Yep, Goldberg. It's me. Good evening.
Right. Hey there.
Continue.
Yeah,
Sheldon's doing a run-in.
Yes.
George Steele, who had been a vicious, hated heel for years and years, becomes a beloved babyface who develops the hots for Miss Elizabeth, much to the chagrin of Macho Man Randy Savage. I got a kick out of that.
I remember that.
Yeah. Brian.
I'm going to tell you, went south after a while, but I'm going to say when this is probably mid 80s, when Orndorff and Hogan.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
But you just always knew in the back of your mind that bad things were going to happen. And they tried it. It was probably 5-6 months, whatever, how long the run was. And then it just, boom, it happened. And you were expecting it. And finally it did. Honestly, I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did. I know it was a storyline, but you could always see Orndorff, that little, I don't know, his facial expression. It was always like, I'm going to mess with this guy up sometime. I'm just not going to do it right now.
Damn that Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I'm jealous of Hulk Hogan, but I'm going to work with him. And then he ended up being called the Benedict Arnold of wrestling for a period of time because he turned on Hogan. So that's me. So
go ahead, Tony. What do you think?
Well, I got to say, God bless Elizabeth Hewlett. You know, she got brought up here a second ago. I first met her, I think it was about 1982. She was working the gimmick table at ICW shows, and she was just a sweet girl back then. It was amazing what transpired, the transformation that she undertook when she was in the WWF. Probably mine was it's not going to be the 70s, but it's going to be right on the edge. In 1980, I'm sitting watching WTBS. And for the previous 2 years, I've watched Dusty Rhodes and Ole Anderson just have a bitter feud. And then all of a sudden, one Saturday, Ole comes out and he's going to team with Dusty against the Assassins. and it didn't last long. And I mentioned this earlier. Everybody always turns on Dusty, but in the case, and this also has a WFIA tie-in because that turn in Atlanta in the Omni was at a WFIA convention, I think. And
oh wow,
and Dusty didn't have just one guy turn on him; he had 6 guys turn on him in the cage because Ivan Koloff and Gene Anderson were special referees, and Ole was his partner, and Ole turned on him. The Assassins, of course, were the opponents, and I just was yelling at the TV, Dusty, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't take Ole as your partner. But he did, and it was we look back on it now as a classic, but when I was a fan watching it in real time, it was just another Saturday,
Yeah.
So it was great.
Mr. Terry Sullivan, what do you got on that?
Well, I would have to say when the Sheik teamed up with Bobo Brazil, and even for the most casual fans, they knew about the Sheik and Bobo Brazil. And this is at the point in time where the Sheik turned face. One of the worst decisions ever in professional wrestling, I think. But so he teamed with Bobo. It really didn't draw any more than they were drawing, which wasn't that great at that time. See, that would have been in 77-ish, 77, 78. It was a desperation thing, and it flopped miserably. But the Sheik team with Bobo, later Dick the Bruiser, the Mighty Igor, and all the faces.
Wow. Mr. Sheldon Goldberg, welcome. And
thank you, sir.
The question was, what odd pairing would you have never thought you'd see?
That's an interesting one. I'll let me answer the question in sort of a backwards way, and then get to the answer to your question.
Okay.
I grew up, of course, in the WWF territory, and in the mid '70s, this was a period of time when the ethnic heroes were still the big thing in this part of the country. You had Bruno for the Italians, you had Bobo Brazil for the blacks, you had Pedro Morales for the Latins. And one other guy, for the Greek fans, you had Spiros Arion.
Oh, yeah. Golden Greek.
Spiros Arion was a tremendous babyface when he first came into the WWF territory, or the WWF territory at that time. And they teamed him with Jay Strongbow, who everybody Jay Strongbow ever teamed up with turned against him. I don't know what that says about Jay Strongbow, but that's how it was.
He's related to Dusty.
That turn was such a shock. Yeah. That turn was such a shock. You didn't see too many angles on WWF TV. You saw maybe 1 or 2 or 3 a year, if that. And they did, of course, the angle where Arion attacks him and takes his headdress and stuffs the feathers in his mouth. That was, of course, the lasting image, other than and then him bleeding and so forth. And then Arion teams up with Fred Blassie. And I can't think off the top of my head who they had Arion team with at different times. But Arion was so Waldo Von Erich. Yes, Waldo. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was one.
Yeah. And Arion had such a legit presence about him that if you were a WWF, you thought that Arion might possibly have a shot at dethroning Bruno.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was it.
Very believable.
Yeah. He was one of the most legit guys who made that turn.
Wow. Well, Benny, if you will, please roll our classic clip number 2 of Angles.
Survive. He knows his hurt. Will not give up. He's going right after Valentine.
This, of course, was where Greg Valentine just went to.
Wow.
Wow. Those last two were actually
Right.
from 81. I took them out of order because I'm an organized guy, but you get the point. And Benny, we'll start with you.
I mean, it like Sheldon said, you didn't really see on TV. You know what you mostly saw on WWF TV was a bunch of squash matches, and then you'd see your occasional tag team title change. But when the angles were few and far between, but when they did them, they meant something. You know, like Larry turning on Bruno, like Arion. I mean, and even before that was Jimmy Valiant turning on Strongbow. Everybody turned on Strongbow, like Sheldon said. But that's how Jimmy Valiant became a heel in 1971. You know, Arian was 75. I think Maivia was, I forget when that was. But yeah, they all turned on Strongbow. And the reason why they did that was because he was the number 2 babyface, and whoever did that got instant heat. So they knew how to make the angles work.
Mm-hmm.
And then Patterson getting slapped there. Mosca.
It seems like a silly straight ahead formula, but you're right. It absolutely worked.
Yeah.
George.
Well, I go back to the traditional type thing where I think when that stuff comes out of left field on the fan, you see Patterson, who at this point in time is an announcer. He's not really in the wrestling business. And to have Koloff go off on him, and then, they're building towards something, and that's what makes it great. I want to mention, too, that one of the greatest, to this day, I think it's one of the greatest, and I was only about 12 years old when it took place, but I remember it like it was the day before yesterday. That was when Bruno had Cowboy Bill Watts turn on him. And that really, I think for the 60s, the early 60s, and it was early in Bruno's career, or career as champion, to have Watts go off. And for the simple reason that I'm jealous. I'm tired of playing in your shadow. I'm tired of carrying you, so Watts says. You're never going to give me a title shot. And you've ignored my requests. And finally, I just go nuts on you. And you guys, that made the mainstream too, because that was a headline story in the Saturday Evening Post, which was a national magazine, not wrestling magazine back in the day. Saturday Evening Post was up there with Look magazine and Life magazine as, one of the premier magazines. And I like those things that come out of left field. And that little clip you had of Angelo Mosca. I'll tell you what, I had a chance to see Mosca only for his year and a half or so that he was in the AWA, but I thought he was tremendous as a heel. I wished he'd have got more of a push than he did in the business, because I think he was believable. He wasn't some freaky looking guy. He just was a tough, mean SOB.
Athlete, legit athlete.
Yeah.
Legit.
Yeah.
Had a great look.
Brian?
Great look, yeah.
I'm going to say,
he was
well, go ahead.
I was going to add that he was from Waltham, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was going to say the Mosca, when he came out of there, the Piper, everybody I'm sure remembers that with the coconut to Snuka. That's just classic. Well, I think one of the greatest, the one you showed with Snuka coming off that cage 15 feet in the air onto Morocco. Nobody you can't really duplicate that. I mean, they've tried with different things. I think the next best thing is when Mick Foley fell off the cage and Hell in the Cell in '99 with Undertaker. But other than that, that's probably one of the great events to me in that era, especially the early '80s. Yeah.
Go ahead, George.
I want to add something to what Brian is saying about that Snuka jump off the rope. And that's something all of us have seen. And of course, in those early years of the WWF, when they done their expansion and everything, I was watching closely. I remember seeing that when it happened. And when you see Snuka get up there and the fact that he stands and he's barefoot, this is what is amazing to me. He's barefoot and he's standing straight up. And like you say, 15 feet in the air, and then to come off, to have the balance on just the rim of that cage. And that's a cyclone type fence. I thought that was a fantastic move and gutsy. I mean, I'd never do it. I don't even like being as tall as I am, much less to get up there. Come on. But that was remarkable. And then I liked that feud. I just want to say, because Benny brought this up, that the jump was on to Don Morocco. And I liked it only because 10 years earlier, I had gotten to see Snuka and Morocco as a tag team in the AWA when Snuka was Lonnie Kealoha in the AWA. And he and Morocco were buddies. And so to me, it was like 10 years later, I see these two guys going, and I liked the idea. Goes back to our turning on a partner type thing.
Wow. Yeah. Mr. Tony Richards.
There was a clip there, and I couldn't tell who it was, but there was a guy giving another guy a pile driver. And I think it was like the second clip, maybe. And
oh, yes, Ray Stevens and Snuka 82.
Growing up in the Tennessee territory, the pile driver was over because it was always known. My grandfather knew the pile driver was illegal in the Tennessee territory. He grew up with his favorite tag team was Roy and Herb Welch, if that tells you anything. But Bob Orton Jr. came in when the ICW was in Kentucky. Bob Orton Sr. had gotten the pile driver over. And Bob Orton Jr. was doing the pile driver. And his matches with Bob Root for the TV title, where we just thought the referee was going to get bumped and Bob Orton Jr. was going to use the pile driver on him. And so and Jerry Lawler had a great pile driver. But the pile driver was over. And every time I see the pile driver being given to somebody, it makes me shiver because I just go back to my days as a fan watching and thinking about, man, they're not supposed to be doing that. That's going to kill somebody. You know what I mean? And so Ray, I couldn't tell that was Ray Stevens, but I mean, he's such a great worker. He did a great job with that one. And because that guy looks legitimately laid out, when he gives him the pile driver.
Yeah. Mr. Terry Sullivan.
Yeah, you got to give credit to what great athletes these are. In many cases, they were pretty extreme angles with a high degree of potential injury. But Snuka was involved in an awful lot of things over the years. I remember one you didn't show was when Colonel De Beers pile drove him onto the floor on the AWA. Wonderful. But it really takes it. You got to give these guys so much credit, not only for their athletic ability, but their ability to get the angle across on their own through their words and their actions.
Good old Ed Wiskoski.
Yeah,
Ed Wiskoski. He's from St. Joseph, Missouri.
Yep.
Wow. Mr. Goldberg, your take.
Yeah, all that stuff is great. One angle that we haven't talked about, which I think is up there with one of the greatest angles of all time, was right after the Grand Wizard died, Sergeant Slaughter turning face on the Iron Sheik.
Yes.
If you remember the episode of TV, they meet in the aisle going to and from the ring, and then the whole thing goes, and that launched the whole Sergeant Slaughter G.I. Joe deal, and I just remember that as one of the greatest angles ever done.
Yes,
Slaughter
perfect in the time period.
Right, the time period too. Mike DeClass, what do you think about that? Of course, Piper and the coconut. I'm sure if you pick up a coconut in the store, it's pretty heavy. I never tried it, but. Okay.
Chris, can I add something?
Yes, of course.
Because we are talking some angles and gimmicks here, we touched on it. I think one of the greatest angles in pro wrestling was when a promoter would come out and say, we are banning a hold, like the pile driver, or the Ray Stevens off the top rope that the AWA did. And I remember when
Bombs away. Yeah.
When they did that with Ray Stevens, his bombs away in the AWA. The thing is the fans, they're saying, yeah, it's a good thing they banned it, and then some people would say, well, I don't know why they banned it. It's his finishing hold, and you get all kinds of emotion. But the fact that it's banned, that gives the promoter a chance for that wrestler to use it all the time when the referee's knocked down or the referee's back is turned, and he used it illegally. And you talk about inciting the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Now he's not just getting the heat because he did it. He's getting the heat because he got away with doing it when he didn't get caught. It was that much more heat for the wrestler. And the same with the pile driver. I think banning a hold is one of the greatest gimmicks a promotion could use.
Yeah.
There was
And
I agree.
I mean, they didn't use it for maybe like 10 years before somebody would come in and use it. I mean, they really banned it in Tennessee.
Yeah, and then Lawler, as George mentions, Lawler would do it behind the referee's back, and then the referee would of course count to 3, right?
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that was the famous Andy Kaufman thing, right? Lawler pile drove him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And because it was banned, because it was illegal, that's what was the magic of it. Because they got away with it, the promoter.
Yeah.
They're yelling at the promoter, and of course somehow the tape of the match suddenly disappeared afterwards. And the referee, hey, I didn't see a thing. And that's magic. That's cheap heat in a way, but it's so good without doing anything out of the ordinary.
I can't remember one specific, but I do remember on occasion it'd be the sleeper.
Yeah,
would get banned by somebody. They wouldn't let them use the sleeper hold.
Tony, you and I talked about that yesterday.
Well, George, I'm going to bring it up, right? The Gagne sleeper versus the Bockwinkel sleeper.
Oh yeah.
Singapore.
Well, and that was one of those things where Vern's sleeper was always, according to the heels, a chokehold, and then Nick come out. Bobby Heenan is boasting that Nick went over to Singapore or wherever it was, and he's got his Singapore sleeper, and it's it's a copy of Vern's, and it just one's legal and one isn't, so
go figure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Benny, why don't you roll our last classic clip of angles here, please, sir?
My apologies. I'm doing this in front of everybody so everybody will know that I'm not ashamed to admit I was wrong.
Memphis, 1984 here. Man, Gilbert was a mess. Bang. Snuka took the guitar shot pretty good there, Benny. What do you think of those?
Yeah, I tell you what, the one I think is very underrated is when Andre the Giant comes out on Piper's Pit with Bobby the Brain Heenan, and then the look on everybody, especially Hulk. I mean, Hulk is absolutely crushed. Boy, did they play that to the hilt. And then, a couple of months later, they're wrestling in front of, I guess, was it really 93,000? It was a lot of people, though. And I think that was pretty much the beginning of Piper's babyface turn as well.
Yeah, pretty much right before that. You're right.
I do want to point out to you guys that I really enjoyed the Hogan, Andre, Bobby Heenan angle and everything. But I think I just have to give credit to Vern Gagne was the one that came up with that turn before Hogan left the AWA. If you go back and look at the tapes when Andre and Hogan were teaming together, and they were taking on 3. It was usually Heenan and Duncombe and Lanza, or Ventura, Duncombe, and Patera, the Andre and Hogan, and they had a little pushing, shoving match, and they were in the dressing room. There's a clip out there, and Vern was going to do the Andre turn, and then Hogan left, and it took Vince a couple years there to fulfill it, but it started again in the AWA. Sorry, Vince.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's true. You can look it up. There's some YouTube video out there of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brian, what do you think of some of those classic clips, right?
Well, we were talking about the pile driver just a few minutes ago, and who did it? Terry Funk.
Yep.
On Ric Flair. I remember that. I saw it. I mean, I remember watching it on TV. Terry was all, oh, I'm so sorry about all this and that. And then all of a sudden, well, boom, and then Ric Flair's in a neck brace. And, after he regained the title from Steamboat, it was a great angle. Got Funk really back for a few months in the mainstream wrestling again. And that guy wrestled 50 years, I think, or something like that. I mean, he's probably doing about 20 there, but I mean, that was just a great, again, just out of nowhere. I'm so sorry, this and that.
He paid for it too.
Yeah, and he did. He did pay for it later. But I mean, it was a great angle. One and that pile driver, and it was believable because when he went up on that table,
it didn't even break.
Didn't break.
No, it bent.
It was supposed to break, I think, and it didn't. And probably Flair was hurt a little bit from it. I mean, they try to protect each other, I know, but
Flair always claims he didn't know that was happening. That Terry just did that.
Yeah.
That's always been his story. Like Terry just led him to the table and pile drove him. He didn't know that he was going to get pile driven on the table.
Oh, well.
And there again,
does even better than you didn't even know it, so it looks even more real.
That was great.
So,
I mean,
and that was my favorite.
And then we seen, of course, the Road Warriors turning on their buddy Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty
with the spike there, Tony Richards through Dusty's eye, right?
Oh, it's just sad. I said that clip makes me so sad because that was.
It's a shame that in today's wrestling, we don't have that aura of believability anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that clip always makes me so sad because I equate that clip with the end of Jim Crockett Promotions. And they had just sold to TBS, and I was running a group of radio stations and television stations at the time. We were running wrestling blocks on the televisions on Saturday night, and I had a good friend, Steve Beverly, who used to write a newsletter called Matt Watch.
Yeah.
And Steve was also a professor of media at Auburn University, and we used to talk every week or every other week, and Steve called me and he goes, well, that's the end of Dusty Rhodes. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, I think they're going to fire Dusty over that angle because they had said no blood on TBS and Dusty defied them trying to hot shot. And I think Dusty's going to get fired over it, which he eventually did as Booker anyway. And so that I have mixed emotions when I see that because Jim Crockett Promotions was such over 50 years of quality wrestling family promotion. And, it was really the end of Southern wrestling, actually, with that angle.
Mr. Terry Sullivan.
Well, they just all speak for themselves that, 30, 40 years later, we still sit here and watch in awe. And such great professionals going at it there. But, they did what they were designed to do. They drew money and drew big money.
Yeah. Mr. Sheldon Goldberg.
I was saying before how it's a shame that we've lost that aura of believability that was in the wrestling that we grew up with. I can't take anything away from the kids today you have some terrific, terrific athletes out there. But the little things, the that sense of drama, that sense of how to build something to where the people buy into it to the point that they want to riot, or the point that they come out of their chairs. You don't see that so much now. I think that is such a tragedy. It really, really is. I lament it. I don't know. I don't know what the future of the business is. I think the future is really in independent wrestling as opposed to corporate wrestling. But and I just hope that some of those old school ways are brought along again somewhere. Maybe not on national TV, but they're brought up in the kids who are coming up behind these guys.
Mike, I want to piggyback on that a little bit from Sheldon. The wrestlers today, I think, and this is a perception or an opinion, whatever you want to take it as, but I think they're more concerned about what they get to do in the ring, or what they can do to show the fans, or how to get themselves over. And they're more interested in that than actually taking one for the Gipper, as the old saying went. And I'm remembering the comment that Larry Hennig told me one time many years ago, when Larry and Harley Race were a tag team. As great a tag team as they were, they lost a lot of matches, whether by count out or DQ or whatever it was, but it was always something to get a rematch. And Larry told me, he said, the one thing that you need to do in this business is you have to realize that if you lose every time you're in the ring, if you can draw the fans back the following week or month to see your ass get kicked again, then you're the winner. Mm-hmm. And you think about that, right. Some of your greatest wrestlers were guys that never held championships, never were, paraded around as a 97-time world champion, etc. It's because they knew how to look at Bobby Heenan. Bobby lived by that motto. I'll let you kick my butt every night, but they come back the next night to see it kicked again. That is winning. Mm-hmm. And I don't think younger kids do that today. I have been in close to dressing rooms, locker rooms with these independents, and they're literally saying, well, I want to get my move in, and I want to do this move. And, come on, guys, just go out and do your stuff and get the fans to come back next time.
Right.
And nobody says, oh, I could draw money with this guy. Oh, that guy would be a great opponent for me. Oh, you should work with so-and-so. Nobody does that anymore. They're all into, getting themselves over.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing, too, with some of these guys, and I say they're a mark for themselves, because they'll tell a promoter, well, I don't want to lose, or I'm not going to put him over. I'm not going to go, drop the match or whatever. And they don't realize that losing can be winning.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Sheldon was saying, is real craftsmen in the business back in the day. I mean, the guys who really knew how to perfect their craft, they'd go to the booker or they'd go to the promoter and go, give me that guy, give me a match with that guy, or give me a program with that guy. I can make that guy. Mm. And I think that's kind of what you guys are saying, right?
Exactly.
Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mike the Class Gregorio, there was another angle I missed there. We talked about off camera from 1989, if you will, bring up, please.
Well, the match between Hogan and Macho Man that started, I guess, on a Saturday night's main event, and culminated in a big match at WrestleMania 5. To me, that was one that wasn't on there, but when the Mega Powers exploded, yeah.
Yes.
And at WrestleMania, Miss Elizabeth was in a neutral corner.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's when that's when Macho Man claimed that Elizabeth had lust. Hogan had lust in his eyes for Miss Elizabeth. I'll never forget that. Back in the late '80s, that was pretty interesting.
And
that was the second. It was the second. Yeah.
Yeah, had to
And that
sell
was
it.
the second year they had WrestleMania in Atlantic.
Atlantic City, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
it was at
George, I know
back to back.
Terry brought it up. Yeah, the Beers pile driving snook on a concrete floor at the Showboat in Vegas, '86. But what about? And I wish I had footage of it. I remember seeing it a couple of times, but I don't even have footage of it, and I have a lot. But when Bobby Heenan broke Buck Zumhoff's radio on a concrete pole in the studio there, AWA, was that like 81, 80, 81?
Yeah. Yeah. And not to give Zumhoff any airtime here because the man's a piece of crap.
Well, right.
But let me say, I'm serious on that. He's one of those guys.
Yeah, he's disgusting.
I don't even acknowledge his existence. But I will tell you this: that was an example of what you said. Someone here said a minute ago, where the wrestler would actually go to the promoter and say, "Give me that guy. Let me work with him. I can make him. I can, put him over." And Buck Zumhoff was one of the very few guys that Vern ever put out of his training factory that really was going nowhere in this business. And Vern couldn't put him anywhere. Nobody else wanted him. And it was Bobby Heenan that went to Vern and he said, "I'll take him. I'll work with him. Let me have him." And Bobby, he started it with that, in the era of the monster boombox back in the 80s.
Yeah. Yes.
You saw every teenager carrying one down the street on his shoulders. Well, that was Zumhoff's gimmick. But Bobby got him over. Bobby got him over and over and over again. And to that, I think it's classic because Bobby took more beatings. But again, we've given that guy enough airtime. He's rotting somewhere.
Right. Mr.
I don't
Tony
say that about too many people, but he's scum.
We all agree, but I had to bring that angle up because Heenan breaking his radio goes down as classic. Mr. Tony Richards, another one from '78, but we'll mention it here. It was when Ric Flair grinding Ricky the Dragon Steamboat's face on the concrete floor in the studio.
Yeah. I've heard Ricky tell that story that actually Harley Race is the guy that ground the sandpaper into the side of his face backstage. He sent him to the hardware store and told him to get some sandpaper and bring it back to the television studio at WRAL in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then Harley took him in the back and roughed him up on the side of the face to get the effect over. Yeah. So
wow, I heard it was a brick, but you said sandpaper, so even still.
Yeah, Ricky always says it was sandpaper. He said to add insult to injury, he sent me to go buy the sandpaper, and bring it back.
Wow.
And didn't tell him what he was going to use it for. But once he got back, he used it on the side of his face to get that over. And then Flair did that with Ricky Morton again in '86 in the TBS studio. And a lot of those great Mid-Atlantic angles wound up being redos once they got the TBS slot.
Right. Well, right now, Benny, if you will, bring up my ECMC still pick, please, sir. Again, we're going to mention this each and every week on this show. ECMC is a local hospital in the Buffalo, Western New York area. And we're going to try and help our friend, Mrs. Robin Restaino, get a kidney in the near future. The phone number here is area code 716-898-6283. Blood types eligible are A negative, A plus, and O. And if there's anybody across this great country that is willing to donate a kidney to our fine friend here in Western New York, hopefully this will happen for her in the near future. And now, Benny, if you will, Mike DeClass, do our military salute of the week.
Okay, this week's salute to service is to Dutch Mantel, who also served. He was in the army and he served in the Vietnam War, and he earned the Vietnam Service Medal. So again, our weekly salute to service is to Dutch Mantel, who also went by the name of Zeb Coulter. He was a manager for Jack Swagger for a while in WWE, but he originally started off as a wrestler.
Right. Wow, very cool. Yeah, each week here we're going to highlight a part of our military salute to service, some people that you never thought served, and we're going to highlight them each and every week here. And Benny, if you will, put up my PSA of the week. PSA of the week this week is want to highlight the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Massachusetts there. We kind of have something similar in the Buffalo, Western New York area, like Roswell Park, as a known cancer institute for helping people with all kinds of cancers. And same thing here, like St. Jude's Hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota there, helping the kids and adults. Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Massachusetts here do the same thing. So you can look them up on your computers, and just another great organization we're going to highlight here this week for my PSA. And well, Benny, what a great show. We want to thank all our historians here. And before we go, though, guys, we got to let Mr. Sheldon Goldberg, better late than never, your chance to promote your 3 books, sir.
Yeah, soon to be 4. I've written 3 novels. They're all related to each other. First one is this one called The Last Fall. Tons and tons of rave reviews on Amazon. These books are fiction, but they are very business accurate. So you'll find a lot of truth mixed in with the fiction. So the sequel to that book is called After the Bell. That's it right there. And there is a spin-off to After the Bell, which is called A Mad Dog's Tale. And that is right there.
Awesome.
Check out the Amazon reviews on all of them. They're available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. And I think you'll enjoy them. Especially you guys who are historians and gentlemen who are historically aware. I think you'll get a big kick out of them.
And of course, I will promote one more. Our president here, Mr. Brian Ferguson's book, Vern, Inside and Outside of the Ropes, available on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. It is very great. And
guest on the Time Tunnel.
Yes. And,
I was a guest, yeah. Thank you.
And I'll be going on there pretty soon promoting our great WFIA here too, Tony.
Yeah, that's right. Weeks. That's right.
And again, though, guys, George, everybody, we thank you for your time, your knowledge, your help, and bringing us this great classic pro wrestling square show this week. And right, Benny, we got to thank them and appreciate them all.
Absolutely. Always.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it very much.
Good seeing you, Sheldon.
Likewise, Benny. Hope everything's well.
Hey, Terry.
George, pleasure to see you as well.
Yes, sir.
Terry, we need to connect, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
We need to connect. I need to talk to you about Detroit.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
There you go. All right. Well, Benny, why don't you take us out of here? And guys, we'll see you next week here with Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA podcast. Take care.
See ya.